Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We love to dig into fascinating aspects of resilient communities. And today we're talking about microcircles,
Microcircles, exactly.
which are these small groups that form the foundation for larger resilient structures.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting how these microcircles often, they kind of fly under the radar, but they're so crucial
Yeah,
to creating that sense of belonging and that shared responsibility that we talk about.
right, absolutely. And we've been looking into this, and we're seeing that, they're defined as these small clusters
Yeah.
of households, neighbors,
Right.
or groups with shared interest.
Mhm.
But, how do they actually contribute to resilience, and why should we even care?
Well, think about it this way. When a community faces any sort of challenge, whether it's a natural disaster,
Right.
whether it's an economic downturn, or even just a local issue that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
those strong pre-existing bonds within those microcircles become invaluable.
They're already there.
Yeah, they're already there. They create this safety net, this system of support that's just kind of ready to go.
Right. It's not something you have to build from scratch.
Exactly. And they go beyond just lending a helping hand during a crisis. They foster this sense of community.
Yeah.
They encourage collaboration and create a more resilient social fabric overall.
Absolutely. So we've kind of got this general idea of what a microcircle is.
Right.
But, there are different types.
Yes,
And we see that, different types, each with their own kind of unique focus.
absolutely.
So let's walk through some of those.
Okay, so one common type is the family circle.
Okay.
And this expands on the traditional notion of family to include extended relatives,
Cool.
close friends, or even chosen family.
Yeah, it's not just the nuclear family.
Not just the nuclear family, exactly. And they pool resources, they share knowledge,
Right.
they provide that multi-generational support that's becoming increasingly important these days.
Right. So it's about creating those strong family-like bonds, even if they're not blood relations.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that family can take many forms and expanding that circle of support.
Yeah. And then there are co-housing clusters.
Yes.
Where neighbors are intentionally choosing to live
Right.
in close proximity and sharing resources,
Right. Things like communal gardens,
Yeah.
childcare, or even sharing tools.
which can be a huge expense for people.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing the power of shared responsibility and, creating a more sustainable way of living.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's skill sharing groups.
Yes.
It seems like that's all about, tapping into the diverse talents within a community.
Exactly. It's like taking those old school how-to workshops, but making them hyper-local
Right.
and community-driven. So imagine a group where, someone teaches gardening, another person teaches basic car maintenance, someone else teaches coding,
Right.
and it's about empowering each other and building a more resilient community through knowledge sharing.
So it's not just about learning new skills. It's about strengthening the community.
Exactly. And, those are just a few examples. Microcircles can really form around any kind of shared interest.
Right.
From book clubs that evolve into community action groups to neighborhood watch programs that expand into broader support networks.
So it's not about fitting into this predefined mold.
Right.
It's about finding the connections that make sense.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of these microcircles. It's their adaptability.
Right.
And their flexibility. They can be tailored to meet the unique needs and aspirations of the people involved.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, right? Because every community is different.
Yes.
So we have a handle on the what and the why of microcircles. Now let's get into the how.
Okay.
What are the components, the building blocks that make these groups function effectively?
So one crucial element is resource sharing.
Cool.
But it goes beyond just borrowing a cup of sugar.
Right. So it's more intentional.
Exactly. It's about pooling resources in a more intentional and systematic way. So think about things like shared tool libraries,
Right.
community gardens where everyone contributes and benefits, or even systems for sharing childcare or elder care responsibilities.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, especially these days
Absolutely.
when things are so expensive.
Right. Resource sharing not only strengthens community bonds, but it also makes life more affordable and sustainable.
Absolutely. And then another interesting component is the concept of time banks.
Yes.
And I've heard about this, but I'm not entirely sure how it works.
So time banks operate on the principle that everyone's time and skills are valuable.
Okay.
So instead of exchanging money, members earn time credits for services they provide to others within the group.
So if I'm great at baking,
Mm-hmm.
I could bake a cake for someone, and in exchange, they could, help me with my garden.
Exactly. It creates a system of reciprocity where everyone's contributions are valued equally, regardless of their income or their professional background.
That's fascinating. It seems like you would not only encourage people to help each other, but also foster that sense of community.
You're absolutely right. Time banks can be very powerful tools for building social capital and creating a more equitable society.
And then another thing that popped up was rotating facilitators.
Yes.
What's the purpose of that?
Well, it's all about distributing leadership and preventing burnout. So by rotating that role of facilitator,
Okay.
everyone gets a chance to contribute, they develop leadership skills, and it ensures that no single person bears the burden of responsibility.
So it's about shared ownership.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a key component of creating a sustainable and equitable microcircle structure.
So we've covered resource sharing time banks, rotating facilitators, but what about when conflicts arise?
Yes.
Even in these, small, close-knit groups, disagreements are bound to happen.
Yeah.
How do microcircles navigate those challenges and make decisions in a way that's fair?
Right, that's a crucial point, and it's where those building blocks that we've been discussing really come into play. So our sources suggest two main approaches: informal mediation and simple consensus methods.
So informal mediation, does that involve like a professional mediator?
Not necessarily, no. It's more about leveraging the trust and the relationships that already exist within the group.
Okay.
So someone who's respected by all parties can act as a facilitator.
Got it.
Help people communicate their perspectives and find common ground.
So it's less formal,
Mm-hmm.
more organic,
Exactly.
because people already know each other.
Right. It's about resolving those conflicts in a way that preserves relationships and strengthens that bond.
And then there are simple consensus methods,
Yes.
which aim to ensure that everyone's voice is heard.
Right. And that decisions reflect the collective will of the group.
So it's not about majority rule.
Right.
It's about finding solutions that everyone can live with.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone's perspective has value and striving for decisions that benefit the group as a whole, even if it requires some compromise.
This has been fascinating.
It is a fascinating topic.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the definition and purpose of microcircles
Right.
to the different types and those building blocks that make them function effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to explore further to see how these principles translate into real-world action.
Well, that's a great segue, because in our next segment, we'll delve into some inspiring examples of microcircles in action, showcasing how these groups are making a tangible difference in communities around the world. Before we jump into those examples, I think it's important to acknowledge that, these groups aren't some utopian ideal. They face real challenges.
Right.
They require effort and commitment to function effectively.
Absolutely. What are some of those challenges?
Well, one challenge is ensuring equal participation and preventing burnout.
Yeah.
It's important to establish those clear roles and responsibilities, rotate those leadership positions.
Right. So everyone's involved.
Right. Create a culture where everyone feels valued and supported.
So not just like two people doing all the work.
Exactly. And then there's the challenge of, navigating those differing opinions and potential conflicts.
Right.
Even in groups with shared values, disagreements are inevitable.
They're going to happen.
They are, and that's where those conflict resolution skills
Yeah.
we discussed earlier, those informal mediations and simple consensus methods,
Right.
they become really crucial.
So it's not just about having the vision.
Right.
It's about knowing how to work together.
Exactly. And another challenge is ensuring that the microcircle remains relevant and adaptable.
Right.
As the needs of the community evolve, the group needs to be flexible.
So it's about being open to change.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, with those challenges acknowledged,
Yeah.
let's shift our focus to the positive.
Okay.
Let's explore some inspiring examples
Yeah.
of microcircles that have not only overcome these obstacles,
Right.
but have also made a tangible impact
Okay. Let's do it.
on their communities.
Our sources mentioned this case study, the Mondragon Corporation in Spain.
Yes.
It sounds like a remarkable example of how these microcircle principles
It is.
can be applied on a larger scale.
It really is. Mondragon's a network of worker-owned cooperatives spanning various industries:
Wow.
manufacturing, retail, finance, education.
Wow.
And it all started back in the 1950s with a small group,
Okay.
essentially a microcircle led by this visionary priest named Jose Maria Arizmendiarrieta.
So they took those core principles,
Yes,
resource sharing, cooperation, democratic decision making,
Yeah.
and applied it to business.
precisely. Arizmendiarrieta believed that, businesses should serve the needs of their workers and the community.
Not just profit.
not just generate profits for a
Okay.
select few.
That's radical.
It was.
Yeah, especially for the time.
He envisioned a system where workers had ownership
Right.
and a say in how the business was run.
And how did that small group become what it is today?
Well, as individual cooperatives thrived,
Okay.
they began to collaborate and support each other, forming a federation. That pooled resources, shared knowledge, and created a network of interconnected businesses.
So these small groups kind of came together
Exactly.
to form something bigger.
And what's remarkable is that Mondragon has not only been incredibly successful financially, but has also maintained this commitment to social responsibility.
That's huge.
They invest in education, healthcare, and community development initiatives,
Wow.
creating a more equitable and sustainable society for their workers and the surrounding region.
So they're really walking the walk.
They are.
That's amazing.
It challenges that conventional notion that businesses can only succeed by prioritizing profits over people and the planet.
Really does.
Mondragon is a testament to the power of cooperation, shared ownership,
Yeah.
and those community-focused values.
Okay, so we've got this example from the business world.
Right.
What about addressing environmental challenges?
Okay.
Our sources mentioned the Transition Town movement,
Yes.
which seems like a perfect example of how these groups can mobilize communities to create a more sustainable future.
The Transition Town movement is a global network of communities taking action to address climate change and build resilience at the local level.
Okay.
It all started with a small group in the town of Totnes, England, back in 2005.
So again, another example of a small group
Exactly.
sparking a bigger movement.
The founders of the Transition Town movement recognized that waiting for governments or large institutions to take action on climate change wasn't enough.
Right.
They believed that real change had to start at the community level,
At the ground level.
with people coming together to create more sustainable ways of living.
And how do microcircles fit into that?
Microcircles are essential to the movement. They encourage people to form small groups,
Okay.
focus on specific areas of sustainability like local food production, renewable energy reducing waste, or building more resilient infrastructure.
So you're not tackling these huge things by yourself.
Exactly, you're creating these supportive networks where people can share their knowledge, resources, and motivation.
Makes it less overwhelming.
Right, and as these microcircles gain momentum,
Yeah.
they start to connect and collaborate, creating this ripple effect
Right.
that spreads throughout the community.
I love that.
They influence local policies, inspire businesses to adopt more sustainable practices, and empower individuals to make changes in their own lives.
So these small actions can have a big impact.
It highlights the power of collective action and the importance of building those strong community connections.
Right.
And the beauty of the Transition Town model is that it can be adapted to fit the unique needs and resources of any community.
Right, because everyone's different.
Exactly. It's not about replicating a specific blueprint,
Yeah.
but rather about embracing those core principles of sustainability, resilience, and community empowerment.
These examples are inspiring.
They are.
They really demonstrate that microcircles aren't just theoretical.
Right.
They're practical tools.
That's right. And while we've only scratched the surface, with these two examples, there are countless other microcircle initiatives making a difference in communities around the globe,
I believe it.
from community gardens and skill sharing networks to co-housing projects and time banks.
Yeah.
These groups are proving that collective action, even at the smallest scale, can create a ripple effect that extends far beyond the immediate community.
I love that. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably thinking right now,
Yes,
how do I get involved?
that's a great question.
Where do I start?
And that's one we'll explore in our next segment.
Okay, perfect.
We'll delve into some practical tips and resources for finding, joining, or even starting your own microcircle.
All right, so we're back and ready to figure out how to actually make these microcircles happen.
Exactly. You know, we've talked about the theory, we've seen some inspiring examples.
Right.
But now let's get practical.
Yeah. So for our listeners out there who are thinking, okay, this sounds great, but where do I even begin?
Well, it can feel a little daunting at first, but remember, microcircles are all about starting small and building those connections organically.
Right. So first things first, finding or connecting with microcircles that already exist.
Right.
Where's a good place to start?
Honestly, the best place to start is often right where you are.
Okay.
You know, start by talking to your neighbors, your friends, colleagues,
Keep it local.
people at your local community center or library. You might be surprised to discover that there are already groups operating
Oh, right under your nose.
that align with your interests.
So that book club that's been talking about starting a garden
Exactly.
could be the start.
Or maybe it's a group of parents at the school who are already brainstorming ways to make the neighborhood safer.
Okay, so recognizing those existing connections is that first step.
Often, yes.
Okay, so what if those networks aren't quite there yet?
Right.
How do we go from those casual conversations
Yeah.
to a structured microcircle?
Our sources really emphasize starting with a clear purpose. What are the shared goals or values that are going to bring your group together?
So like a mission statement.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is it about sustainability, supporting local businesses, building a stronger sense of community, or something else entirely?
And once you have that purpose, then wait.
Then you start thinking about those building blocks we discussed earlier.
Okay.
Take stock of the resources, the skills, and the passions within your group.
Right.
What do you have to offer each other? What unique talents or knowledge can be shared?
It's kind of like an inventory.
Not just of physical resources, but everyone's individual strengths.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And once you have a sense of those collective assets, you can start brainstorming activities or projects that align with your purpose and leverage those strengths.
Right, so maybe it's a skill-sharing group where people teach each other how to garden or do basic home repairs or even coding.
Exactly. Or maybe it's a co-housing cluster that starts with a shared tool library and evolves from there.
So many possibilities.
The possibilities are endless.
Right, and they can change.
And remember, microcircles are adaptable. They can evolve and change as the needs of the group and the community shift.
Oh, that's
Wow.
good to know because things are always changing.
Right, exactly.
So what about some of those practical things like decision-making and conflict resolution?
Right.
How do we ensure that things run smoothly?
Those are key elements to consider.
Yeah.
Our sources suggest leaning on those simple consensus methods and informal mediation techniques we discussed earlier.
Right.
They help ensure fairness and prevent disagreements from kind of derailing the group.
So everyone feels heard.
Exactly. And when it comes to communication, transparency is key.
Yeah.
Regular check-ins, clear agendas, open channels for sharing information help keep everyone on the same page.
And there's so much tech out there these days.
Right. There are tons of digital tools that can help facilitate that communication and coordination: group chats, shared calendars, project management apps.
All that good stuff.
But remember, technology is just a tool. Don't underestimate the power of face-to-face interaction.
Right.
Those in-person meetings, potlucks, or casual gatherings help build stronger bonds and foster a sense of true community.
It's about balance.
Exactly.
Any final words of advice for those who are ready to start their microcircle journey?
Don't be afraid to start small. Embrace the power of connection. Nurture those relationships and let your microcircle become a source of resilient support and positive change in your community.
Well said. I love that. And remember, listeners, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Or in the case of microcircles, maybe it starts with a single conversation,
Right.
a shared meal, or a simple act of kindness.
You never know what ripples of positive change you might create.
That's a great point. Well, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to explore the world of microcircles. And until next time, keep diving deep, keep connecting, and keep building those resilient communities.